Well, good morning, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome into another exciting Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants broadcast. Before I dive in with the official intro, that countdown music is pretty groovy, so I always encourage classes to groove a little at their desks. I want to say our Grand Junction folks at Tope Elementary, you guys are like the best dancers of all time, so thank you very much for that. That was a very enthusiastic start to the day. My name is Jesse, as I said, and what we do here, I know we've got a huge new audience today at Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants, is to bring conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world. We do 50 programs every single month featuring the coolest people and places on planet Earth. And you are catching us on a very exciting day because today is the last day of our fully epic series in conjunction with the folks at If Then. So If Then is the greatest initiative of all time, featuring and showcasing amazing women in STEM. They have 125 ambassadors that they've made full-size statues of. They've had major events all over the US and beyond. And they just do incredible work making sure that girls and students of all kinds get to learn about the incredible careers that they are in science, technology, engineering, and math. Now, we have done programs with divers and archaeologists and neuroscientists. It has been a ton of fun. Today, I think you guys are all very excited because we've got our biggest audience in the entire series for this one. Now, before I go live and introduce our speaker, I want to note we are going to have a Kahoot today. So between our talk and our Q&A, if you want to play along with a little 4-question quiz, test your understanding, have a little fun, you can type in that game pin and do just that. Now, I'm so excited because we are going to talk about a very special animal with our Dr. Joe Varner today, and that is the pika. Now, we've had lions and tigers and bears, oh my. We've had sharks, we've had crocodiles, we've had any number of species. I'm a biologist by background, so I love bringing in nature stories, but we've never had one on these guys. So we're all in for a treat together. I'm as excited as you are, as you can tell. And without further ado, Joe, thank you so much for joining us today, and welcome to the program.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. And I want to give a special shout out to the first graders at Tope as well, just because they came to visit us at campus a couple of weeks ago, and they are doing problem-based learning on pikas, where all of these awesome students are trying to come up with solutions on how to help save the pika. So you guys are awesome. Keep up the good work, and nice to see you again. All right, so today I'm going to tell you a little bit about what's it like to study the world's cutest mammal. And actually pikas, which you can see here, were voted in a very scientific poll to be the world's cutest mammal. And I want to show for you what they sound like. So here, you can listen to them. They are small mammals. They're closely related to rabbits and hares. They're about the size and shape of a russet potato. I have a little stuffed animal here so you can kind of get a feel for how big they are. They fit right in your hand. And they're the only rabbit relative to call. So if you think about it, rabbits don't make a lot of noise, but pikas do. And their noise is very cute. It sounds like a squeak toy.
It sure does.
They're so cute. So before I tell you a little bit about what I do, I want to share with you guys a little bit about how I got to be a pika biologist. I've been studying pikas formally for about 10 years, but I've been a pika enthusiast for much longer than that. And as a kid, I liked to be outside. I grew up in the mountains outside of Salt Lake City, which is not too far from Grand Junction. I liked animals, and I thought maybe I wanted to study marine biology or parrots. And I liked science and math in school and worked hard through high school. Was really fortunate to be admitted to attend MIT. And I liked calculus so much in high school that I thought maybe I wanted to study physics. But when I got into my classes, I ended up deciding that I was a lot more excited about biology. I spent a lot of time studying these C. elegans worms, which are these little tiny worms that can tell us a lot about our own nervous systems by studying the nervous system of the worms. But that work involved a lot of sitting in a cold, dark room by myself. And I literally spent a whole summer watching cells divide in worms. And it was really important work, but didn't seem to really be that exciting for me to do. And so I moved on to doing some engineering. I worked on a little project to grow cells in these little tiny devices. And by the time I was done with that, I needed a little bit of a break from lab work. So I spent about a year and a half traveling. I worked on some farms. This is me selling plums in New Zealand. And I spent a lot of time in the mountains skiing. And I realized at this time that I really liked spending time outside in the mountains. And so I was sort of sitting around trying to figure out what my next move was when I read a newspaper article about pikas in the paper. And in that newspaper article, they had interviewed a scientist named Denise Deering, and she had done her PhD on pikas. And at this point, I was like, wait, wait. There are scientists that study pikas. I would love that. I would be so good at that. And I could go spend all of my time outside with the pikas, which I had loved for a long time. And so I contacted Dr. Deering and ended up starting in her lab as a technician studying hantavirus. And when that project ended, she took me on as a graduate student so that I could actually become a pika biologist myself. So I started graduate school in 2010, just almost 15 years ago. And my research was looking at pikas that were living in this really unusual habitat in the Columbia River Gorge. So we typically think of pikas as living in high elevation mountain alpine ranges, which I'll talk a little bit more about here in a minute. But they live near sea level just outside of Portland, Oregon, in this really unusual and unique habitat. While I was there, I also helped start a program that's called Cascades Pika Watch, which is a program where anybody in that area can help get involved to report pika sightings. And we train volunteers to help monitor the population as it recovered from a recent wildfire. Right now, where I live in Colorado is very, very close to a very special mountain range called the La Salle Mountains, which is just outside of Moab, Utah. So if you think about sort of Utah red rock desert, and like even the license plate for the state of Utah has the delicate arch, that red rock arch in it, these mountains are right behind that. And they're actually in the background of that picture. And so they're very unusual because they're surrounded by this really low elevation desert on all sides. And that's really what we're trying to do right now, is to try to understand how the pika population is doing there. So let me tell you guys a little bit more about this special animal, where they live and where you can see them. And then I'll share a little bit more about what we're doing to help understand them. So in order to understand my work now, you kind of need to know a little bit about the species. As I mentioned, pikas are small mammals. They're closely related to rabbits, and they live typically in rocky slopes in the high mountains, usually above about 8,000 feet. So this is a picture of me in pika habitat. Here you can see a picture of me, and this is a rock slide where pikas live in Colorado. If we look at a map of the United States, you can see this areas in yellow are the places where we find pikas. So here's me in Grand Junction. And if you are lucky enough to spend some time over here in Western North America, either in the United States or in Canada, you might have had an opportunity to see these pikas. Not shown on this map, there is actually a second species of pika that's found in southern Alaska and in parts of northern Canada. It's called the collared pika. It looks similar to the American pika, and it lives in similar habitats, but it's a different species and it looks a little bit different in its coloration. All right, so now I am showing you this picture, and I'm just going to leave it up here for just a few extra seconds to see if you guys can spot the pika in the picture, because there is a pika. There's one rock in this rock slide that looks a little bit furrier than any of the rest of the rocks.
What do we think? I think I might see him. It's pretty cool.
All right. Hopefully you guys saw him. He's right here. And when you look at rock slides like this, a lot of times you'll see the little pika, and it's easier when they're moving around than when they're sitting still, like in a picture. But you'll also sometimes see these big piles of grasses and wildflowers sitting there on the talus. And this is one of the things that I think is most interesting about pikas, because these animals actually, unlike most animals that live in these high mountain habitats, they don't hibernate for the winter. So they have to stay awake and they have to eat something, but their habitat is completely under snow for about 9 months of the year in many of these places. And so what pikas do to survive in these habitats is really interesting. They actually build these huge piles of food during the summer when there's grasses and flowers available for them to eat. And then they eat that food during the winter. So here's another picture of a pika. A single pika, which remember is about the size and shape of a russet potato, builds a food cache that can be up to 62 pounds of food that they store to eat during the winter. Now, that may not sound like that much food, 62 pounds, although it probably weighs, as much or a lot more than some of you guys. But 62 pounds of vegetation, if you scale this into the size of us so that we were behaving like pikas, that would be equivalent to us collecting 20,000 pounds of food, not even counting any of the packaging that we put our food in. And what we would have to do to cache that much food is we'd have to make 5,000 trips to the grocery store in just 3 months. And on every single one of those 5,000 trips, we would have to carry home about 4 pounds of food in your mouth. So if you don't know what 4 pounds of food looks like, it's somewhere in the range of like 2 to 3 heads of lettuce. So the next time you guys are at the grocery store, I want you to take a look at the potatoes and then take a look at the heads of lettuce and imagine having to carry home 4 heads of lettuce in your mouth 5,000 times all summer. And that basically would be all that you do. And I think that that will give you kind of a good sense of how much work it is to really be a pika. So I want to show you a video of what this looks like. And keep in mind here, this shows you that I'm a better pika biologist than I am at filming pikas. But you'll see a piece of habitat, and then what you'll actually see is just what looks like a little plant bouncing around across the rocks. And that's because the pikas blend in really well with their habitat. There it goes. And then it'll come back out again right here. So hopefully you could see that that was a really small animal carrying home a really big piece of plant. And that's a great situation for that animal. That's going to be, you know, a half a day's worth of food or so that it just collected for itself for the winter. All right, but it's kind of complicated. And one of the problems is that pikas are really sensitive to high summer temperatures, and their body temperatures are really high. So a pika just hanging out and resting, its body temperature is somewhere around 104 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, if we humans had a temperature of about 104 degrees Fahrenheit, somebody would say, you're really sick, maybe you should go see a doctor, right? And it would be really uncomfortable and you would be really, really sick. But because they have this thick fur and they've got a really high metabolic rate for their size, they generate a lot of body heat and they can tolerate a lot of body heat. However, it also means that it's very easy for them to overheat and then have problems. So after just 2 hours at 75 degrees Fahrenheit, a pika can overheat to the point of having some really serious problems. And so what they'll do instead is they'll actually dive below the rocks to keep cool. And this has raised some concerns because in some places pikas have disappeared as a result of climate change. So this is a map that was put together by one of my collaborators, and this is in the Great Basin of the Western United States. So here we've got Utah, Nevada, Idaho, Oregon, California, and each of these dots represents a place where we know that we had pikas about 100 years ago. So, and then when these researchers went back to all of these sites and they resurveyed all of the rocky habitats at each site to look and see if pikas were still there. And what they found is that somewhere around 40% of these sites no longer had pikas at them. So either the pikas had moved or they had just died out in that location, or perhaps they had moved upslope sort of out of the regular area where they used to be into a place that's more favorable for them. So the pikas, the sites where we lost pikas tended to be lower in elevation. They were below about 9,000 feet in elevation. They tended to be warmer in the summer, and they tended to have less habitat area above a certain elevation. So you could think of these as being sort of like islands in the sky where the sea level has kind of risen and it's made the island to be uninhabitable. In the same way that as sea level rises to islands in the ocean, it reduces the amount of habitat that's available for the species that live there. So this has led, I've been really interested in trying to understand pikas that are living in isolated populations. And in particular, there are some places that we're seeing these pika population declines, but there are other places where the populations seem to be doing really well. So the pikas are not just sort of like dying off unilaterally. And I think that that actually makes this species a lot more interesting because it means that we can learn a lot about their sort of overall resilience and their ability to deal with environmental changes by studying them in these really unusual habitats, which may reflect what's going to happen to their habitat a little bit more broadly later on. So 3 of the places that I've been working are in the La Salle Mountains in Utah that I just mentioned. And you can see here in this Google image file, these are the La Salle Mountains. This white stuff is the stuff that's above tree line. This is where we find the pikas. And if you look all around it, this over here is Arches National Park. This is all red rock desert surrounding these mountains for a really, really long time. Grand Mesa in Colorado, where I live, is similar to that. Grand Junction is sort of just off the left side of this map. And here we've got the Grand Mesa. For those of you guys that are local students, you guys look up at this mountain almost every day, I'm sure. And we have pikas up there that you can go check out. And this is a really unusual place. If anybody has ever been to parts of southern Idaho, this is a national monument that's called Craters of the Moon. And it's really cool because it's a really, really low elevation habitat. It's somewhere around 7,000 feet, so a lot lower in elevation than we would expect to find pikas. But what's really special about it is that it's actually an old lava flow. And so the rocks, instead of being this alpine talus that we usually see the pikas in, are actually these broken pieces of lava. And there are pikas that live there in spite of the fact that the summertime temperatures, the temperature of the rocks during the summer, during the heat of the day, can sometimes be over 100 degrees. And so it can actually burn your skin if you touch it. And so the pikas that live in this habitat have to make a lot of adjustments in terms of when they're active during the day and also what kinds of food resources they can depend on. So I want to share with you a little bit about kind of the work that we do from day to day. One of the things that we do is go out and conduct vegetation surveys. So these are some of my students and collaborators who are out looking at the plants that are available next to pika habitat so that we can understand how much food is there for the pikas in these habitats to be able to eat. We also place temperature sensors in these rocky crevices. So this is one of my students working at Craters of the Moon. And you can see she's working with this temperature sensor that she's holding in her hand right here, right below her face. And she's actually going to weave that temperature sensor way, way down into the crevices so that we can measure not just what temperatures are happening at the surface that we experience, but what are the temperatures that the pikas are actually experiencing themselves. In addition to the temperature sensors, we also put out these camera traps. So hopefully you can see this. This is a camera trap that has a little camera in it, and it's got an infrared sensor and a motion sensor. And so when a pika runs by it, even at night, it'll actually record a video. And so this is a little video. You can see this pika right here is bringing in a load of food to his hay pile. So he's going to bring it in, put it down, and then he's going to have a couple bites of snack. And so by collecting data like this is really cool because we can actually see how many trips the pikas are making and also what they're caching. And we're able to go back to these videos again and again without necessarily having to sit there and watch it the whole time. We also, in some places and at some times, we actually trap the pikas and we anesthetize them. So this is me with a pika in the anesthesia chamber in the field. It's actually a spaghetti Tupperware. Don't try this at home, kids. You have to have a lot of special training and a lot of special permits and permissions in order to do this. But what we do is we actually give them a really light dose of an anesthetic. It's the same kind of thing as you would get at the dentist's that would if you've ever had like a cavity drilled or some sort of dental procedure where they give you a little bit of gas to just sort of make you a little less aware of what's going on and relieve any stress. And then what we do is we put these colored ear tags in their ears so that we can mark them and then be able to tell which individual is which, and we're able to tell who is surviving from year to year. So at my long-term site in the LaSalle's, last summer, we actually spotted one pika with these tags that we had trapped in 2018. So that pika is actually up there, and she was an adult in 2018. She is now at least 6 years old, which is really, really cool and kind of a long span for a little animal that size. Releasing the tagged pikas is my favorite part of the job. And so this is a picture of a little video of what it's like to be able to release a tagged pika.
Oh my gosh.
Right?
Oh,
They're so cute. I love them so much.
that's how you get into pika research.
It's really, really fun. And it's really fun to see them back out there doing their business. They're not bothered by the ear tags. Doesn't seem to affect how long they live. And they are just out there living their life in this habitat. All right, the last few things that we do, we collect scat samples. So we have these little tubes and we actually collect little bits of their poop. This is what pika poop looks like. I think that they have the cutest poop of any mammal as well. And in the lab, then we take that poop and we actually extract from it. We can measure their stress hormones. So these are molecules that circulate in your body when you're stressed out. And some of those molecules end up in your poop. We can collect the pika poop and we can actually measure their stress. just as a way of being able to understand how the pikas are doing in different habitats. And then lastly, we do some behavior surveys. And I really, really enjoy this as well. This is a picture of me doing some behavior surveys at the Craters of the Moon site, because it's just really fun to like get to know the pikas and see what they do and how they live and what they're eating and things like that. So I wanted to share with you guys just a couple of other things about being a pika biologist. During the school year, I teach biology at college at Colorado Mesa University here in Grand Junction. I teach somewhere around 11 to 12 different courses, ranging from introductory biology for non-majors to upper division electives in animal behavior and mammal biology. And in the classroom, I try to give my students sort of hands-on experience in the process of science. So not just memorizing facts and numbers, but helping them to develop ideas and hypotheses about the natural world, and then collecting and analyzing data to be able to test these hypotheses. And a lot of times this means going out into the field to observe organisms in their natural environment. Tomorrow we're going on a field trip to the Grand Mesa to go look at mammal tracks on snowshoes, just like this picture. And I'm really excited about that too. Some of the best parts of this career, in addition to sort of advancing the science about these unique animals, is that I really love the teaching that I get to do. I get to bring students into the field, and then of course being in the mountains in nature and watching these amazing pikas is also super, super fun. If you think this sounds fun, I was thinking about some sort of important qualities for becoming a pika biologist or other kinds of wildlife biologists. One thing is you do kind of have to be in good physical condition in order to do this kind of work, because it is pretty hard being out there and hiking in the mountains. And because the pikas live at high elevation, that means you have to go up there too in order to see them. Having a lot of patience and being able to sit still for a long time at the same time to be able to watch these animals, especially in these unusual habitats where they may spend a lot of time down below the rocks, is really important. And having good attention to detail. Playing well with others. Science is definitely a team sport. So being able to work effectively with your teammates and colleagues and collaborators and your teachers is really important. Having a spatial awareness is really important. So sometimes we put these temperature sensors down in the rocks, and you have to remember where it was, because it's not very obvious because it's down in the rocks. And so being able to find the stuff that you put out again, GPS units really help with that, but it'll only get you so close. And then you have to kind of be able to remember where you put stuff. Having a good attitude under these rugged field conditions and sometimes inclement weather. I actually really like being outside in inclement weather, as long as I'm sort of safe and not too cold. I think it's really kind of fun being outside because it just it's very exciting. And enjoying hiking on unstable rocks. And then, of course, anything that is, sort of any kind of science career, you need to have an intellectual curiosity, some responsibility, and the ability to follow through on projects, and then being ready to spend the summer outside. So that's what I have for you guys for today. I'm really excited about taking some of your questions and looking forward to the Kahoot project as well.
Yeah, well, first and foremost, thank you so much for such a wild ride. You are epic enthusiastic about those animals, and that is spectacular. A big thank you to our audience as well. You guys are awesome. As Joe said, we're going to dive in with our Kahoot. By the way, Joe, if you want to come out of screen share so you can see us and make sure we have a bit of a conversation, take your time to do that. But while you're doing that, I will note we are going to go in with our Kahoot. If you're new to Kahoot, the faster you answer, the more points you get, and what you win is Joe and I's everlasting respect. And I think that that's pretty fun. So if you get them wrong, no worries. Good to always take a guess. And if you don't want to play along, that's fine too. You can just yell out the answers in your class. We're going to do these questions based on our presentation, test our understanding, have a little fun. And then I'm going to head to our 2 Grand Junction class first for questions. And then we are going to go straight after that to all our Agora Cyber Chase crew, our YouTubers. There's lots of you asking questions, which is fantastic. So without further ado, I'm going to dive into the questions. And then, Joe, if you want to give us a little hint when there's a few seconds to spare in each of these, by all means, chime in and guide us to the right answer when we're in the last seconds of each of these. Here we go. All right, kids. Question 1. Pika's closest relatives are, we talked about this at the beginning, are they mice, squirrels, rabbits, or beavers? Now, some of these are to each other. In fact, all the rest of these are in one group, and pikas are close. They're not as far as like from a lizard, but we've got one that stands out as being our pika relative, and it is Let's see, rabbits, and most of you got this right. So yes, rabbits, hares, pikas. Is there any other member of that group, Pika? I'm trying to think of lagomorphs. If there's anyone
No,
else.
it's just rabbits, hares, and pikas. And I think that pikas look a little bit like a kind of almost like a guinea pig, but they, when you watch them run, they do kind of hop the way that rabbits do. And so sometimes if you watch them run in slow motion on a video, it's easier to see the resemblance.
Very cool. Well, Decisive Lion takes our lead. I kind of hope someone with a Pika name wins this because I'm childish. And that actually has happened before in several of our Kahoots. So we did talk about them living somewhere like this early in the broadcast, but do they prefer warm, sunny valleys? Do they prefer low down or high up? So if it's high up, it's false. And if it's low down, it's true. Where do pikas mostly live? We talked about this at the end, some of the skills you might need as someone who wants to go follow them along. They tend to live way up in those mountains. So yes, it is false. Although we did have maybe warm and sunny. I threw people off with that. That's my bad. But yeah, mountain ranges. We want to go high up for pikas. How often, how much do you typically go up? Where's their elevation?
You know, it depends on where you are, right? Because if you're further up north, then the temperatures are a little bit colder at lower elevation. So up in like northern Montana, northern Idaho, they're down somewhere around like 3,000 or 4,000 feet. But where I am here in southern Colorado, it's closer to about 9,000 or 10,000 feet.
Wow, that's quite the hiking.
Yeah.
All right, Sturdy Badger takes our lead. So we go to question 3. Why do pikas scream? Why are they making that noise? Is it they need to burn off all that extra energy? They're just like they're too full of plants. They like to talk to rabbits. Why not? Or they're telling everyone this is their territory. They're saying, this is my area. Stay away. I can give you a hint. It might not be why not. So we got a few people a little gun shy to answer this one, but yes, it's their territory. So pikas are very territorial to my knowledge. Yes?
That's true. And I didn't actually really cover this in the talk, so it was a little bit of a tricky question.
It was a tricky question, but yes. So a lot of animals, when you're gathering all that food, you want to make sure that you're not gathering your neighbors. You don't want to end up in a fight with someone else. A lot of animals are very territorial about their food, their mates, and a lot of you guys got this right. So way to go as we go into question 4, our final question. And then Ms. Zimmerman's class, I'm coming to you first for a question. All right. Pikas gathered lots of vegetation to last the winter. How many times do they have to run around to go get it? Is it 15 trips, 100 trips, 500 trips, or thousands of trips? We talked about this with a great analogy early on in the program. In fact, Joe, we had classes on YouTube that went another way to say how great an analogy that was, linking grocery store visits to their relentless grass gathering. The answer is thousands of trips. Do we have not an exact figure, but like a rough estimate of how many they have to do when they're gathering things?
Yeah, it's about 5,000 trips. Yeah, it's a lot. So, and if you think about spreading that over 3 months, that's like maybe 100 days. It's a lot of trips per day.
I go grocery shopping once a week, and so that's 12 trips in 3 months. That's 5,000 is a lot. Our winner, Sturdy Badger, way to go. If you are any of our folks in our top 3, let us know. We'd love to hear from you. But we are going to go to Miss Zimmerman's class first, so one of our classes that had the chance to learn about pikas more firsthand. Come on in, first graders, and take us away. Welcome in. Hi, Tope Elementary. Hi. You're good. Take your time. You're okay.
Ask your question. How many actual times do they go and get the food in a year?
Yeah.
That's a really good question. So it's still about 5,000 times that they have to go and get the food. But the thing is that they can't go do it all year, right? So like here in Grand Junction, if you go up to the Grand Mesa tomorrow, like I'm going to, you're going to find that everything's under snow. And so there's just nothing to eat up there. There's no grasses, there's no flowers, there's just a bunch of snow. And there's some pine trees that maybe are still out, but they're up above the snow and the pikas are down below the snow. And so they only are able to do that during the 3 months or so of the summer, like June, July, August, and maybe parts of September, that there isn't snow. And so that's why they have to make all of those trips just during the summer and not throughout the whole year.
Gotta last the winter in their snow cave with all their giant hoard of food, which is very exciting. Great question, Miss Zimmerman's class. All right, Miss Monica's class, I'm going to head to you guys as well, Grand Junction, if you want to unmute your mic. And then we're going to go one by one through our Agora Cyber Chase crew. So all our teachers, if you guys want to get ready, share a question on behalf of your kids. Miss Maines, I'm coming to you first in a second. But Miss Monica's class, hey, guys. Welcome in. I love your tree.
You guys have a pika too.
Yes.
I have.
Valentino, come on.
I have no pikas. I'm very sad.
Okay. Why do they have to eat?
Ooh.
Yeah, that's a good question. So all animals have to eat. It's actually like a thing about being an animal is that none of us can like make our own food the way that plants can, right? So if you think about a plant, they are able to absorb sunlight and they're able to use that sunlight and the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere to make their own food. But animals, from worms to pikas to fish, we all have to eat food because none of us are able to do that. So pikas have to eat for the same reason that you have to eat. And if they don't eat, they'll feel just like you do when you don't eat, which is to say hungry.
Yep. Great answer, Joe. That was fantastic. Miss Mains's group, I'm coming to you guys first. Miss Luciano, I'm coming to you second. We're going to do the whole run of our virtual class. But Miss Mains, if you have a question on behalf of your kids, you can unmute your mic and lay it on me. Hi.
All right. Hello.
Oh.
Our first question, well, they kind of had two little questions. So first one, ever since we brought this up, they want to know if the pika is related to Pikachu. But then I do have another one.
Yes, that is a great question. And it kind of depends on what source you go by. But yes, Pikachu is kind of like a pika, except that it has a lightning bolt tail and pikas don't have tails. They just have adorable little round bottoms. But yes, Pikachu is a pika.
Yes. I wish they had lightning bolt tails.
That was the big one. And then they also were wondering how long they live. Ooh, I know you mentioned 6 years, but
no, that's a great question. And that's, so basically the short answer to that question is we're not sure. And we think it varies by location, but that's one of the questions that we're trying to answer with this research and why it's really important to have at least a few people or a few places where we're doing these kinds of studies with the ear tags. And so in our study, I would say that the average lifespan, I've been doing it for about 5 years now. And our average lifespan is probably in the 2 to 3 year range. But like I said, one of the 12 animals that we marked in 2018 was still alive last year. And she was, and probably 3 or 4 animals that we marked as adults in 2019 were still alive last year as well. So it seems like, in some places they may be still living a long time, or at least some animals are.
Yeah, very cool question. Thanks, Ms. Mains. Ms. Luciano, I'm coming to you next. If you want to unmute your mic, you're good to go. I just put the order of who I'm coming to, so you can stay tuned for that. And we're going to come back to our Grand Junction classes in a few minutes as well. So get ready. Hey, welcome in.
Hi there. We did have a question. Our question was, how many babies do they have at a time?
Ooh.
That is another great question. So a lot of times when people think like that they are related to rabbits, then that means that they must also, breed like rabbits, which means have a lot of babies. But actually, the pikas don't have as many babies as rabbits. On average, they have about 1 or 2 babies in the spring. They time reproduction so that babies are born right around the time that the snow is melting, so that mom has access to fresh food when she's nursing the babies, like all mammals do. And then sometimes in some places, they'll actually have a second litter in August. But we think that in most places, that's a really, really hard situation to be in, to be a baby pika born in August, because you only have a few months to grow up, build a hay pile, and survive the winter. And so those guys kind of usually only make it if they're able to inherit a hay pile. Like if there's somebody who built the hay pile and then left or was eaten or something, and then maybe that works for one of those babies. But that's one of the things that actually we think might be really important in the Columbia River Gorge, where I did my PhD work, because there isn't as much snow cover. And so that second litter might have a better chance.
Thank you so much for all that nuance. I like the idea of legacy hay piles too. You get to go to Harvard if you have one of those. It's very exciting.
Exactly.
Miss Moreno's class, I'm coming to you next, and I'm going to take a couple from YouTube before we go to Miss Johnson and Miss Canon's class. Miss Moreno, come in. Hey.
My 5th graders wanted to know, what is the pika a prey, and what animals hunt the pika?
Ooh.
Yes. So first off, just so you know, it's pika, not Pika, although they do say Pikachu. And secondly, they are prey items, and they are most commonly eaten by weasels. So weasels are a little bit bigger than pikas, but not by much, but they're long and kind of spindly, and they can sneak through the rocks, and they're very fast, and they're very efficient predators of pikas. Sometimes, occasionally, a hawk or a coyote or something, bobcat, something like that, will occasionally catch one, but they usually only catch sometimes the juveniles that aren't necessarily quite as good at getting under the rocks. But getting below the rocks is usually a pretty effective defense against those guys, right? Like hawks can't get down in the rocks, but a weasel can follow a pika through the rocks.
It's quite amazing the diversity of animals that are hunted by weasels. The weasel family is unusually effective as predators, and they get, the wolverine's the biggest one. They can take down like a moose. Weasels are scary. Don't mess with weasels is the moral of the story.
Yeah. We have gotten a weasel in a pika trap a couple of times before, and it's a very delicate process to get them out because, and I should say by itself, not with a pika. I didn't have a massacre in the trap, but just a weasel in the trap. And it was really scary because it would just you would try to open the door for it and it was just going for my hand. It was not interested in going out. So we had to get this sort of special tool to be able to open the trap door and let it out without getting too close.
That is that as dicey field stories go, that is up there. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
This was Ushi's class, our Ontario crew. Oshawa, welcome in. They want to know, easy question, is their fur soft? The quick one.
Yes. Their fur is super soft, and because they have to stay warm during the winter, their winter coat is especially long and plush, and then as they molt into their summer coat, that's still soft, but it's less soft. But most of the times that we handle them, we're wearing gloves, so we don't really get to experience that.
This is good to know. And you talk about being a trained professional and handling them that way too, and that is a really important note. The winter thing leads into this great question. How can they live in the mountains when they're so small? Does being small help them in some way? What's the deal?
Yeah. Well, so being small helps them in a couple of ways. One is that it allows them to get down below the rocks, which gives them safety both from predators, like we just talked about, but it also gives them access to cooler temperatures below the rocks. So if you hang out below the rocks, the temperatures tend to be cooler and they tend to be more stable during the day than being at the top. And so those are some of the advantages of being small. But one disadvantage of being small is just that it's a little bit harder to regulate your temperature if you're small, and you need to eat relatively more food than something that's larger. So there's challenges to them being small, but also some benefits.
Fantastic answer. Great question. Thanks, Ms. Juicy's class. I'm going to head to our Grand Junction classes really quick, actually, because I know you guys are grade ones, and I want to make sure we get in those questions and you're not waiting too long. And then Ms. Johnson, Ms. Cannon, I'll come to you guys in a second to wrap up. We got 4 more questions together. I wish we could go all day, but time flies and you're having fun in these broadcasts. Ms. Zimmerman, I'll come to you really quick first. Hey, guys.
Why do pikas hibernate? Why do pikas not hibernate?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And, the short answer to it is that I think we don't really know why they're not able to, but actually all lagomorphs, so rabbits, hares, and pikas, none of those animals are able to hibernate. They just, I think that maybe it's because their metabolism is a little bit too high that they can't slow it down and go into a deep sleep the way that a lot of other animals are. But a lot of rabbits during the winter, they, the snowshoe hare doesn't hibernate either. It lives in some of the same habitats, but it turns white during the winter for camouflage, and then it goes around and eats whatever it can find at the surface. But for pikas, because they have to stay in the rocks and the rocks under snow, that's why they've kind of come up with this different strategy of caching their food.
Yeah, what an interesting question. We've never had anyone ask anything quite like that before, so way to go.
Yeah.
Ms. Martin class, I'm heading to you, and then Ms. Johnson, if you want to unmute your mic, I'm coming to you right after. Hey, guys, welcome back. Hi.
Why do they not drink a lot of water? And why don't they have to drink a lot of water? Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah. So the pika drinking water thing is actually a really interesting, that's sort of an interesting thing because they don't actually drink water. Instead, they get all of the water that they need from the plants that they eat. So by eating plants that have a lot of water in them, it would be like us eating a really luscious iceberg lettuce salad that has a lot of high water content and then not drinking water. And that might not work for us because our water needs are different than pikas. But that would be sort of what they're doing there is getting the water from their food. However, we have seen in some places where the climate is a little bit drier, so the plants are not as water, don't have as much water in them. Pikas do sometimes actually go down to like creeks or ponds or little puddles and drink free water. So a few of us have seen it, but it's pretty rare.
You're so good at this Q&A. This is fantastic. We're getting some really thoughtful questions today, everyone. Before we head to our class, I just want to note this really sweet sentiment. So, as you are amazing, in case any of our classes have to go, I want to make sure everyone gets to see that you rock, and that was a spectacular presentation. So thank you for that, our Oshawa crew. That's really, really nice.
Can I just show you guys? I just realized that you aren't able to see this, but I wanted you guys to know that I have this great Pika t-shirt on.
Yes, best shirt ever.
I know.
Man.
I realize you can't see it from there.
Oh, it's been so thematic. We got stuffies, we got shirts, we got everything in this Pika program.
Yeah.
Miss Johnston's class, come on in. I know your camera's off, but we should be able to hear. Oh, there you are. Hi.
Hi. So some of our questions actually have been answered, so thank you. We did have another question. Where are they in the food chain?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so pikas are what we call, in the food chain, we would call them a primary consumer or an herbivore, right? You know what that means is that they eat mostly grasses and flowers, but they eat plants entirely, and that they are eaten by predators. So like we talked about, weasels will sometimes are probably the most effective predators of pikas, but occasionally a coyote or a fox or a hawk or an eagle will get a pika and eat it. But they are important prey base for the weasels, and they are important in eating the plants.
Yeah. Guys, this has been one of the most fun, truly, like I get to do this for a living. I've done 1,500 of these. This is one of the most fun Q&As ever. You guys are so thoughtful with all this. It's been amazing. We're going to head to our last Agora Cyber Chase class. Andrea's group, come on in, unmute your mic, and you are good to go. I think, we've got, maybe that's frozen. Maybe it's so excited we just froze. In which case, let's see. I'm going to head to Miss Main's class for one more question just to wrap us up. If you guys want to come in before we say farewell, you are good to go. Hey. Let's see. Hi, Miss Mains. Oh, unmute your mic.
Sorry, I think we have all of our questions answered. Someone is asking, can you have a pika as a pet? Because they think they're so cute.
I know. The sad answer to that is no, but you can have a plushy pika as a pet. But if you think back about the temperature sensitivity, it's just really hard to keep them alive in captivity. And so, no, you can't have a pika as a pet. But I encourage you to buy a plush pika because they are around forever and they're very soft. Can I share one more thing that I realized I forgot was in my presentation? But for those of you guys who live or who travel to areas where you can see pikas, we actually developed a smartphone app recently. And that was actually developed in part through the support of If Then, but it's called Pika Patrol. I don't know if you can see this.
Yeah,
but and it allows you to report pika sightings wherever you are. So if you are ever interested in getting involved in pika research, you can do that. I will put a note in the chat here.
Yep, I'm getting it up too, and I'm going to email all our registered classes with this. This is really easy to find online. So if you want to check out Pika Patrol, lots of opportunity to play around with that, especially for our classes in Colorado. That's so exciting. Thank you, Joe.
Yeah.
Well, time flies when you're having fun. We're nearing the end of the broadcast. I want to stress again, this is all part of our If Then series. If you want to check out the remainder of our broadcast with other amazing women like Joe, there's so much more to discover. IfThenSheCan.org has so much. And if you want to share this program with your family and friends, it's on YouTube. It's going to be there forever. So 3 weeks from now, 3 years from now, go check it out. Lots of fun to be had. Before we bring in Ms. Zimmerman's class and our teachers to say a big thank you and farewell, is there any final message you want to leave us with on pikas, on your career, anything to wrap us up?
Geez, I don't think so. I think I just gave it that anybody can be a pika scientist, and you can help us understand how pikas are doing in where you live or where you might visit by downloading Pika Patrol. And we just released a new version of it. It'll be in app stores shortly, and it now is also available in Spanish in addition to being in English. It has training materials. It's really a cool tool, and we're hoping that it will really help us get a better handle on why the species is so variable. Plus, it's really fun.
We've covered citizen science. We've covered field biology. We've covered the cutest mammal in the world. We've had a great Q&A. Classes, thank you so much, Joe. This has been amazing. What we do to wrap up every program. I'll bring in our teachers just to say thank you and farewell. And Miss Zimmerman's class will bring you in to say thank you and farewell. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful day. Bye, everyone. Thank you so